Hi guys, here we are today with Martyna Lewinska, co-founder and CTO at Fiat Republic. Martyna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you so much. How are you?
Yeah, good. Just busy as I'm sure you guys have been. Exciting year for you at Fiat Republic. Why don't we just kick off just by getting a bit of an idea into what your background is, you know, how you started your career, really what your passions are, because it's led you to building Fiat Republic, and I think it's fair to say that in your first year you've kind of smashed it. So I'm sure people will be interested to learn how you guys have done that.
Sure. So yeah, I have background in engineering. So actually, ever since I was little, I always enjoyed anything that had to do with computers, anything that had to do with math. So that was my great passion, anything related to math, right? And I knew that at some point when I need to choose like what I'm going to do in my life, I wanted to make sure that I'm going to do something that has to do with math. And that's how I kind of like landed with control systems and robotics, which wasn't probably, the obvious choice, mainly because I didn't really know at that time whether I want to go directly into pure programming or I wanted to get, the bigger picture of things. So to learn about hardware and software. So I did kind of like the latter, right? I did learn about hardware. I did learn about software. I, program robots, learned assembly language, microcontrollers, VHDL, all of that. But I also enjoyed, the pure programming bit of it. That was the beginning, right? So I have masters in control systems and robotics. As for my career, I started in business intelligence. So I actually learned all about the world of data, ETL processes, why data is so important, why do we even need it in the first place, right? I then moved to cloud engineering and software engineering. And later I became the head of platform engineering, managing a team of platform engineers in a fintech company in London. I started in bigger corporations, so huge organizations that actually introduced me to the processes at scale. So how things are looking when you have like 100,000 people in a company. But when I moved to London, that changed because I joined smaller startups. And honestly, I fell in love because, the impact that you can have in smaller companies,
Sure.
Well, it's incredible, right? So I love the vibe. I love the fact that you make a decision and you actually see it become, a reality later on.
The next day.
Yeah. You don't wait 3 weeks, you don't wait 3 months for it to happen. And actually, it happens straight away. I mean, obviously, it comes with responsibility, right?
Sure.
So that was kind of like my beginning of the journey before I started Fiat Republic.
And in terms of, you're now a CTO, and again, I think we've discussed this before. You're growing rapidly. What's the shift been like from actually being an engineer to actually now being a CTO? Because I've got to be honest, and correct me if I'm wrong, when I speak to a lot of CTOs now, I feel that they're not necessarily that technical, and it's much more about the managerial role than actually coding or developing themselves. What type of like CTO are you, and how have your experiences as an engineer like shaped the CTO that you are?
So I guess the answer would be I'm the type of CTO that the company needs right now. So in the early days, I was more of an engineer, very much hands-on, building with everybody else, being deep into the code, being deep into the the technicalities of everything, right? But as the company grows, you start hiring people. That role shifts, it changes because you need to then focus on the bigger picture. You need to focus on the dynamics between different, team members, between different teams. And you need to create many more functions within the company, especially if you're a regulated company like we are. So for me, it's a combination of being able to be an engineer in the beginning gives me the part where I actually know how everything was built from scratch. I have that knowledge because it's difficult if you haven't taken part in actually building process. It's then hard to jump in and understand everything, right? So for me, that's the huge benefit. I try to stay technical, so I still kind of like try to do something technical to understand exactly what we're doing, how we're doing things, why is it this and that, and so on. Because this allows me to learn exactly what my engineers are experiencing when they're like developing. That means that I'm able to remove the obstacles as quickly as possible. As for what impacted the CTO I am today, I would say for pretty much every CTO that I've met, And not just them, it's all the managers that I've reported to. It's the people that I worked with that impacted the CTO I am today. Because like some showed me what are the good things. Quite honestly, some showed me what not to do. Like it's all a learning experience, right?
Yeah.
And thanks to that, I have kind of like the great understanding of what I want to do, what kind of culture I want to create in Fiat Republic to make sure that the engineering can thrive, to make sure that people actually are eager, to join Fiat Republic, to build with us, because that's the thing you want to achieve.
And sorry, when were you founded exactly?
2021.
Okay, so you're a year old, and
yeah,
how big's the team now?
The whole company is 27 people. Engineering is 11 people.
So I've got to ask, how have you done that? Like, it's so quickly. It's very evident just looking at your website that you've got the support and the belief from some major companies, some major institutions, none less than Masayoshi's son at SoftBank. What's the affiliation there?
So as for SoftBank, we're part of the Emerge program. So that there's that. In terms of like achieving so much within a year, I think it comes down to the founders. It comes down to the the initial team, and being able to to convince people to join. Because hiring, as you can imagine, when you have no online presence, like you only have a website and that's it. It's not the easiest thing to kind of like sell the dream that, hey, there is a Fiat Republic, we're building something. We're just a small startup from London. There were many unknowns, and trying to convince people to join wasn't the easiest task. Right now, in comparison, it's much easier. Thanks to our marketing team, right? We do have Crypto Legends podcast. We have people at Fiat Republic blog series. So there's so many things that if somebody Google us, they can see something about us, about the company, about the culture, and they can decide whether they want to join or not, right? And I think the other thing that's important is the team is bigger right now. So we have, like I mentioned, we get much more engineers. And that means that during the recruitment process, people get to know more people. And again, they are able to kind of like quickly gauge what kind of like engineering culture we have in the company. That is a huge selling point for us.
And as part of that, you kind of describe yourselves as like a Web 2.5 company. You're bridging the gap between banks and crypto. What exactly is a Web 2.5 company?
Sure, it's the in-between, if I can put it this way. So the Web 2, when it comes out to payments, that would be the banks. Web 3, that's the crypto world. And Fiat Republic is Web 2.5. So we sit in the middle, right in between the Web 2 and Web 3. And what we are doing, we're creating a compliance first Fiat as a service platform that helps, unlock the crypto and make crypto mainstream. And that puts us in a very, very unique position, right? Because we are the trusted entity at the intersection of banks, crypto platforms, and regulators. It also means that we do have visibility on the on-chain and off-chain. We are able to combine the data and give the full journey of the flows that are happening, which means that the banks are more eager to cooperate with us because they trust us more. And that trust is quite important for us, So trust between crypto and banks, that's really in the DNA of our platform, the way we're building it. I mentioned the platform, right? But it's not the only thing that Fiat Republic is doing. We're actually also, we've created the Fiat Republic Consortium, what is a members only sort of club. That means that if the members signs up to it, they are able to access, a harmonized way of compliance, which means ultimately that they're better off.
So where have you started with this? Because obviously it sounds like there's a huge undertaking here. There's a very clear and specific mission. But why does it exist? What is it about Fiat Republic that is really standing out from the rest of the companies in this sector?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that we truly understand our client base. So we know exactly the pain points of crypto. If you talk to our founders, we're all very excited about the crypto world, the Web3, and we know what is missing. What is happening right now is, cryptos don't really have the voice. It's like banks are there, they're not really eager to support crypto. And if you look at the statistics, it's still the kind of like crypto needs the fiat because that's the entry point and that's the exit for the crypto economy, right? You need the fiat flows to get in there and get out of it, right? And that means that what is happening right now, crypto platforms don't have the great access to the banking services because they're being turned down and they're being what we call debanked on daily basis. because of the risk appetite that is changing within the banking providers, right? We want to change that. We want to make sure that crypto platforms are trusted. We want to make sure that the compliance is at a certain level. And we want to make sure that on one hand, we gather, crypto-friendly banks and banking providers that are able to provide the banking services to crypto platforms.
So I've got to ask you, like, what will banks look like then in the future?
Well, I think banking is going to change. So I think there's room for everything if you think about it. Because like even right now, like sure, I will go probably try to buy a coffee and I will be paying with my card. I don't really use cash anymore, but there are places where cash still exists, right? It is changing. Like there is room for everything, I believe. And right now, banks probably are recognizing the fact that crypto is not going away. There were a few years where kind of like they were, let's say, uncertain and well, not that optimistic about crypto. They would probably say like, oh, crypto, we don't touch this. But I think by now they realize that yeah, crypto is not going away. So right now we need the adoption of crypto.
And in order to make this successful, again, because there is competition out there, it's very much about executing with speed. Why was it so important for you guys to have your go-to-market adopted so quickly? Like, why did you need to execute in such a short space of time?
Well, we knew exactly what we had to build, right? We had the product market fit. We knew the problem. We knew the solution. We knew how to build the solution. So it only made sense to actually, build it and make sure that our clients get it. That's why going to market was quite important for us as quickly as possible. Because if we had the idea, there is a chance that somebody else had it as well. That's always there. And sure. We are very much passionate about making sure that we unlock the crypto economy.
Sure. I've got to say, but you also built the team really quickly. And as someone that I still spend at least a third of my time just like recruiting the team. I'm always like speaking with engineers, developers, anyone creative. I'll always like make time for them. But you've done it again. You've done it very, very quickly, like in about what, like 5-6 months?
A few months, yes.
Few months. Okay, so how did you go about doing that with such speed again, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, in the beginning I was quite lucky because I actually knew an exceptional engineer from uni that agreed to help us build the MVP. He actually joined later Fiat Republic full-time as a principal engineer. And yeah, in the beginning, that was the beginning, right? And after that, it was, I'll be honest, long hours spent on LinkedIn trying to go through the profiles of candidates, trying to find the right person. And like I mentioned before, sell the dream and being able to convince people to join. And we didn't have much, like there were just a few of us, right? So making sure that people believe that we are able of creating a company, we are able to, create a culture that is quite important for engineers. That was the beginning.
See, that's where you and I are different. You say sell the dream. As a rule, I always say sell the nightmare, because when you're joining a startup, you're going to have so many problems so early on. Like, I want to make sure that I've got people that are just like incredibly resilient, and I want to make
that's the trick. That's the trick. I think the dream can be different for many people. So I was always quite honest with everybody that we're joining. It's like, it's a startup environment.
Yeah.
That means that we're moving very, very fast. That means that we don't have somebody else that can take ownership of something, right? It's down to us.
Yeah.
We very much follow the rule, you build it, you own it, right? So I think being honest with the candidates is important, because ultimately, if you oversell, I would put it that way, then everybody's unhappy, because the person is going to leave. You're not gonna end up, with anybody joining, and it's a no-go for anybody.
And now that you've built the team, and you're continuing to build, I guess, Fiat as a service.
True. Yeah, Fiat as a service.
So I mean, how do you maintain or retain the company culture? Because I think that the challenge, for companies that grow so quickly, so early on, it's that they haven't really defined their culture in the first place yet. They're still finding their feet. So what type of culture is it that you're trying to create at Fiat Republic, and how do you then go about scaling that?
I think it starts with the founders, to be honest. And we actually defined our values quite early on, and they are evolving. They're evolving as we grow, somebody's joining the company, they're impacting how the company is, what the company stands for, and so on, right? But yeah, we put the values, we kind of like came up with what we believe is the right thing to do, and we try to make sure that no, we lead the same way. So we're showing through our actions, through the way we run the company, what the values are. And that's very important for the culture. So you cannot just say like, here, this is how we do things, and it just happens. No, you actually need to show, you need to be that. And this is what we're doing. So it starts with very, very, strong group of founders. And on top of that, I believe the culture is something that you need to really focus on very early on, from the very beginning. So you don't wait 6 months for it to happen. You need to be very specific as to what you want to build and
what culture you wanted then. So sorry, did you know? Sorry to jump in. Did you know what culture you wanted even before you started?
Yes.
So like, oh, sorry. So like with the technologists, because obviously like you've got a very solid tech team, right? They're sitting at the heart of your business, sitting in the heart of everything that you guys are doing. How do you ensure that you're giving them enough like visibility to that culture, and that they are then applying the culture that you want them to? Because engineers are difficult.
Oh, that's true for sure. But I mean, they're amazing. On the other hand, I think, well, engineering is not just some department, in our company. We are like, from the very beginning, we knew that we want to build a company where, tech and product are at the very center of the company. So we are a fintech where the tech is not just some afterthought. It's there from the very beginning. The way we do that is we make sure that everybody has a certain level of knowledge. So you won't find a single person in the company that doesn't know what an API is. But on the other hand, you won't find a single engineer in the company that doesn't know what product we are building, who are our customers, what problems we are exactly solving. That means that's a very good understanding. Like, everybody knows what is happening. We try to share knowledge as much as possible. And you don't have to be an expert when you join. Like, you don't need to know everything about, payments or crypto when you're joining the company. We do have, weekly crypto trading desk. We do have crypto snacks, product talks, and all of that to make sure that everybody is able to, gain some knowledge in the space. Other than that, I think, when you look at our all hands, for instance, there's always an engineering part in the all hands. From time to time, we make sure also we do some, tech deep dives into, all the technical bits to introduce it to the wider, group in the company, making sure that everybody in the company knows exactly what the technology is up to, what we are building. It goes both ways. So we also like share the knowledge about compliance. So if you can be a backend engineer and you will still know exactly like what the compliance team is doing, what was their daily kind of like, what do they do on daily basis, what they deal with, right? Oh. That means that there is no disconnect between different functions in the company, and the culture is quite healthy. We have lots of visibility on everything that is happening, and we can simply focus on building the best Fiat as a service solution.
So I actually have the tech guys, the engineers, sit in on marketing meetings, and I have the sales guys, less so, but I have the sales guys sitting on engineering and design meetings, just so they're like in touch with like what it is that we're actually doing. But I'm actually a nightmare to work for. Or work with. What? So again, like we've established, like how you've gone from being an engineer to being a CTO to how you've built this, like what can only just be described as a very highly successful startup. I guess now you're kind of more a scale up, right, than a startup. What do you like to work for?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm a nightmare. I'm demanding. I change my mind all the time.
Oh, I see.
I'll phone people at like 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday. Like I'm horrendous.
Okay, that's a very good question. I think it would be easier if you ask one of my engineers than actually myself. But I'll answer. So I think at least that's my goal. My goal is to be an enabler. So a person that makes sure that removes all the blockers. So that you can focus on your work, on delivering what you actually want to build. And that's my ultimate goal. That's one thing. The other thing is what really kind of like gets me going. It's what I'm passionate about is it's the people management part as well. So for me it's very rewarding when I see somebody joining the team, then I see how they grow, how they reach their potential, reach their goals. And it's a great journey, right? And for me to be part of that journey, be able to help somebody reach that, it's the ultimate reward.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. I mean, it's also very challenging, right? You've got to be quite unpopular at times. It's just it's part of the territory. But in terms of like what you're building with your platform, right? It's a global platform. And one of the mistakes that we made, or one of the mistakes I made when like I started Raion, was that I didn't think about the architecture and the infrastructure deep enough. And I didn't give us the opportunity to actually build a global platform. And we accumulated such technical debt, we were like, right, start again. How do you guys go about ensuring that you don't make that mistake, and how do you go about making sure that you're building a global platform from now?
So that starts with, I think, the experience we've had and the goals that we set up front. So from the very beginning, we knew that our platform needs to scale and we need to be able to handle huge volumes. That meant that whatever decisions we made early on, we had to always kind of like decide like, what is the impact that this decision is going to have? What is the impact on the customers? What is the impact or on our scalability? How does it look like? And if we knew that there was no impact on on customers, or we can come back later and change something without so much too much hassle, we would put it in our tech debt backlog, right? But it's not something that is ever growing. We make sure that it kind of like remains around the same level. We try to take pay as much debt as we can whenever we can, right? And a few months ago, when we kind of like tested for the first time our application, we're kind of like testing 10,000 transactions per day. Then we're testing 400,000 transactions per day. Then we went on to 1 million transactions per day, right? So we knew that we had to be ready for the scale from the very beginning. And it comes also from the experience. I actually have experience with infrastructure, as a platform engineer. So I knew what pitfalls to avoid, which are the things in the architecture that need to have very strong foundations, because they're very hard to change afterwards. And some things might take a little bit more time early on in the very beginning, but they pay back. That means that later down the road, you don't have to spend, 2 months, changing the architecture of your whole application because you made a decision before.
And have you had any like major failures yourself?
In my past or in the company?
Do you know what? Either or. I mean, I think that for any like startup founders, kind of like it's part of the territory. Be prepared to fail.
True.
A huge part of like the Raion community. I think something last time we checked, about 15-20% of our community, they're aiming on building their own fintech or company in the blockchain space over the next like 18 to 24 months. So a lot of our community, they're kind of about to embark on the journey that you're going through or you've been through. It comes with failure. Is there anything that you've particularly experienced, or is there anything, like any advice that you would have for people that are about to go through that themselves?
I'd say don't be afraid to fail. Sooner or later, at some point, it's gonna happen, right? But the truth is that you don't fail if you don't try. So you first need to kind of like put yourself out there, like give it a go. And sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not. But I think even if failure is a learning experience, so ultimately you kind of like you learn from it, and that means that in the future you're gonna avoid that mistake.
Sure. Because you've gone for broke from day one. You've kind of you've gone out there with such a big idea. You said we're going to build a platform where our clients developers can self-serve. I guess that allows you to really focus on the innovation part of that. Like, where do you then go with your team? How do you let your team focus on innovation?
I think we knew exactly what we wanted to build, and we knew also that we are building for the builders. That means that kind of it's a higher bar, because engineers and developers, when they're looking at your API, they're the biggest critics out there, and we knew that our API had to be the best you can get. So we knew we had to follow the best practices in terms of like how to build a good API, and we asked ourselves that question very early on. So it can be anything. It can be like making sure that the error handling is good, making sure that it's consistent, it's backwards compatible, and all of that, right? So we do have, let's say, certain rules that we always follow when we are building our API, our platform, and that pays off. That means that the engineers who are using and then integrating with Fiat Republic have an amazing experience, right? So it starts there. I think it's important also how you implement your processes in the company and engineering team as well. So we always ask for feedback all the time. We ask and we listen. So if we see, somebody can complain about, let's say, the build times being too long, or, API tests being very slow, or, a CI/CD runner just dying, or internal wiki not being good enough, right? It can be anything. So we make sure that we listen, we spot the issue, we get feedback, we find a solution, and we apply the solution straight away. That means that in the development lifecycle, everything is as optimized as possible. And people don't get a chance to even get frustrated because something is not working the way they would like it to work. And that ultimately means that everything is pretty much streamlined, and people can just like focus on their tasks, focus on their job, and think about, how to improve it, how to take it even to the next level.
But you also have to be able to decipher good information from bad information. And like one thing and one bit of advice that we had very early on was go out there and just sell the product. Because I was all for like, let's just give it away for free. Let's just let companies play with it and let's see what they do. And what we found was that when we gave the products away for free, no one complained. They might just not use it, but they never ever complained. When we started charging, and I mean a tiny amount, we found that all of a sudden we got a whole list of complaints, and we got a whole list of like feedback and suggestions. And all of a sudden, we were getting we were doing the most phenomenal research. So we actually went out there, we started speaking to more companies. I didn't care if they paid £1 for it. I just wanted them to pay something. And we then use that research to then go away and decide which changes were relevant. And not all the feedback was relevant. How do you go about deciding? Because there must be times when you're thinking, okay, I do see it from the customer's perspective. At the same time, here's our roadmap, here's our bigger vision, and here's how they're going to benefit. So how do you go about making the decision as to what changes to make and what ones you shouldn't be making?
So you asked me before, like, why was it so important for us to get the product out there, like to build as quickly as possible? That's one of the reasons. So being able to put it out there, make sure that we get some feedback from our customers, that's invaluable. That means that you have something, you have something you can rely on. You have something that you can, put together in a document, and you can just analyze and think whether this is something you want to include in the platform or not. I think, considering, let's say the good things from the bad things and knowing exactly what to build comes down to a few things. So making sure that how many use cases are you covering? How many kind of like customers would use a certain feature? Like it can be anything. So it has to make sense from the business perspective. It needs to make sense from the customer perspective. Of course, customer comes first. But when you build your roadmap, you need to ask yourself that question, like, what is the biggest impact? What is the best thing that you can build for the customer while listening to them, of course, right? So it's important to understand also that when you kind of like combine the first, let's say, group of customers that are using your product, using your feature, you need to always ask yourself which customers are representing the majority of your client base as well, because you want to solve problems for the majority, and then you want to add also other things for the others as well. Crypto platforms usually have very specific problems. There is a huge overlap in terms of like what exactly they need. So that makes our job a little bit easier in the beginning, but we also have amazing, product people on the team that are able to exactly understand, like, yes, this is the right thing to build. This one is a little bit different. And the same goes for engineering. We put everything up for discussion, especially when they're like very technical bits. We make sure that there is a discussion upfront, that we first design. We first ask ourselves so many questions. We put it through a very rigorous process before making changes to our public API, because once your API is out there, it's there for a long time. You don't want to keep coming back and changing things all the time, because it's a nightmare for the customers.
Sure. And again, it's like you were saying, it's better to spend more time early on, making sure you're making the right decisions and really thinking through the problem. And again, that's something that I probably did wrong. I was so excited by some of the technologies we could build. I didn't really think about the user experience. Whereas now, 5 years later, or 3-4 years later, only think about the user experience, like throughout the process. But look, I mean, and in terms of like Fiat Republic, what's the future look like for you guys? Can you keep growing at this pace?
Oh, I think we can. I mean, we're pretty good at growing, I would say. So we're building like crazy because yeah, we know exactly there are so many things we want to build. There are so many features that we want to put out there for our customers. So really, our roadmap right now is never ending. We've got big plans. So definitely you'll hear from us.
Martyna, and we're looking forward to hearing from you guys. So yeah, definitely we will be in touch and following up with you guys and watching with enthusiasm. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much.